It is something that's hard to imagine, putting your trust and your life in the hands of someone you don't know to make a dangerous journey into the U.S. We saw a tragic example of that after 53 people died after they were put in the back of an 18-wheeler and discovered right here in San Antonio. In today's KSAT Q&A, we have Roger Enriquez, UTSA Associate Professor of Criminology and Criminal Justice, an attorney, also an expert on Latino issues and immigration law, to talk about this. Roger, thank you for being here. You know, there's a difference in those who come across the border, turn themselves in,
ask for amnesty,
ask for asylum, turning themselves in, and those who are trying to evade authorities. In the instances of human smuggling, can you give us some insight into how that sort of criminal operation works from the time a person makes that decision to go that route to try to get into the U.S. until they're either here or, in some cases, discovered in the back of an 18-wheeler?
Right. So the decision-making process is as different for each individual as there are folks out there. I mean, country of origin, how much they have by way of resources is really going to end up deciding, having a major decision for them, how it is that they try to get into the United States. Unfortunately, there are vast criminal enterprises, cartels, if you will, that have networks both in Mexico, even beyond Mexico into Central America and all the way into the United States, that are willing to take their money and try to bring them into the United States. So it's really, there's not a fixed way that folks typically do it. Much of it depends on what sort of resources they have to make the trek, and also what sort of resources they can expect when they arrive in the United States, because many of them may already have families here.
And you were saying that some of these operations are, as you described them, are astute. They may have one person who gets the group into a truck, one person who drives that truck, one person who may operate the next point in which a stash house, so-called stash house, if you will. So there's a lot of people involved who may not all necessarily be connected. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, definitely. So any criminal enterprise typically works in cells. It's one person's role to, for example, recruit individuals who are trying to seek, who are fleeing their country, right, or come to the United States. Another individual is actually going to maybe cross them, and somebody else is going to pick them up in a rendezvous point, and then somebody else is driving them to San Antonio. And then from San Antonio, they might jump in a Suburban or a van and go to Atlanta or Chicago or wherever the place may be. But what we know is that they're loosely connected. Like, they may not know, they may just receive instructions on where they're going, and they're often not told, what is it that they're hauling, et cetera. Again, because if someone is apprehended or something happens, that basically the trail goes cold with them.
Obviously, what happened in the south side of San Antonio was tragic. We see these incidents. We see people getting busted in the back of 18-wheelers. There's no data on exactly, how many people are being stopped or what's happening. We know it's probably just a fraction of the amount of people who are being smuggled in this country. A few years ago, I and one of our photographers and a Brooks County Sheriff deputy, we hiked across part of those ranches. And we were told that a lot of times they will take them from the border to Brooks County, drop them off, have them go through the power lines north and south, because they know Border Patrol is built up there in the Falfurrias area. And then they will pick them up once they get on the other side. Is that by how much they can afford to pay? I mean, you have to make that trek if you can't afford to get a ride all the way up. And how lucrative are we talking about for some of these cartels, this money?
So first, the original part of your question with respect to getting dropped off, again, depending on the resources that folks have, they may just have enough money to come over and then sort of try to make a trek across the very inhospitable territory, right? And so that might be all the money they have, and that might be all they can try to do, right? But others may have more resources. They may try to be secreted in the back of these tractor trailers and brought further, picked up earlier and brought further into the United States. So is it lucrative? It's extremely lucrative. I mean, what's already being reported is that I've seen figures between $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 for just this most recent event. There was 67 individuals in there, assuming that they all paid more or less the same amount of money. Obviously, that's a huge sum of money for the folks who are organizing these cartels or these organized criminal enterprises. So it remains a lucrative enterprise because there's been a tremendous amount of militarization and along the border, and that journey is just getting more and more dangerous.
You taught us a term that we were unaware of, Crimigration. Can you explain what that is and where this concept comes from?
So the idea is that it refers to sort of the criminalization of immigration law. When we think about immigration law, we tend to think about it just in its most recent terms, the way we know it, of the last 20 years, right? But the reality is that folks have been coming to the United States, since there was a United States. And the reality is that immigration law for many, many decades was just sort of viewed as administrative law, right? You'd look at the statute, does this person come in? How do they come in, et cetera. Beginning sort of in the late 1970s, early 1980s, the immigration law they started criminalizing the immigration law. So it wasn't no longer just sort of an administrative law like tax law or patent law or what have you, but all of a sudden it had consequences, criminal consequences beyond what was typically would happen. And so that's been going on now for, the better part of 40 years. Increasingly, it becomes weaponized. The idea that folks cannot move freely from one part of the country to another part of the country, from one country to another, becomes criminal, not just administrative penalties. And so, you see unlawful entry and unlawful reentry being the number 1 and 2 federal crimes, which wasn't the case, many years ago.
Has that led to what we've seen on the border with these cartels, because it's become so lucrative to get in, and the militarization on the other side, trying to make it harder to come in? Is it kind of a vicious cycle that we're in right now?
For sure. And then you see the absence of sort of true comprehensive immigration reform that takes into account the two very important aspects of any immigration law, which is family reunification and creating a labor supply for the nation. So that in the absence of having laws that sort of address the issues, you're going to have a very tough time stopping the push factors and the pull factors that really drive why folks want to come into the United States.
Roger Enriquez, UTSA professor of criminology and criminal justice. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, Roger.